Hi, this is Jaya. In this video, we shall see about the development of education during Victorian England. Very less importance was given to education before 19th century in England, and therefore we can say that in each part the education was not uniform. That is, all over England education was not imparted uniformly, and therefore education in the country was retarded. And in the earlier periods there were many kinds of schools in England. But the public schools charged high fees, so only the upper and middle classes were able to go to those schools, and therefore, along with the Church of England, National Society conducted schools and they collected small fees. In addition to all these, church schools also were there, and a large number of private schools were also conducted for all classes of people. But the dissenters and the Roman Catholics were not allowed into the government schools. It may be because of the law or by the custom. So the dissenters and Roman Catholics had to run their own institutions, but they were very expensive. Some of the private schools were charging very less fees, but the management was very scandalous. And it is one such school, that is Do the Boys Hall, is what described in Charles Dickens' famous novel Nicholas Nickleby. And most of the private village schools were below standard, and there was no central authority to control all these educational activities all over the country. And particularly primary education was neglected in England till the early part of the 19th century. And though primary education was neglected, secondary education of the well-to-do schools were having a very remarkable development. And the children who went to these well-to-do schools were the children of the upper and middle classes, and these middle like this schools were founded by kings and the town corporations, and the training was done for the students so that they can become the ruling classes. In fact, the Duke of Wellington has said that the Battle of Waterloo he was able to win over Napoleon only because he had played on the fields of Eton. And not only that, every Englishman who were very popular and were of eminence in England would definitely have been one of the old students of the public schools like Eton, Harrow or Winchester. But unfortunately, these schools became notorious because there was no discipline at all. But Dr. Arnold, who was the illustrious headmaster of Rugby and the father of poet Matthew Arnold, brought all these changes to a betterment. He served as a headmaster of Rugby for 14 years, that is from 1828 to 1842, and he gave so much of importance for the study of religion, and also he introduced the monitorial system, and he felt that this will help in maintaining discipline among the students. And another good thing is he started organizing games in the school, and so much importance was given to the games that some critics even said the students toil at games. Toil means work very hard at games and play with books, because they did not give that much pressure on the students. And this system of education, that is giving importance to games, was believed to help in the overall development of the personality of the students. And slowly all the other schools and even the government schools started adapting this method. And one thing that helped the government to think of a uniform system of primary education in England was because of the second reform bill, which was passed in 1867. Because according to the second reform bill, most of the working class, they got the right to vote. And at that time, Robert Lowe, who was totally against this reform bill, sarcastically he said, we must educate our masters, because the working class will become their masters because they are going to elect the people to the parliament. So he said, first we must educate our masters so that they will know how to choose the correct person. And though he said it sarcastically, many people were convinced that education was of the masses, that is for all the people, is definitely a must. So only then the democracy will become a success. And the outcome of this conviction was Gladstone's Education Act of 1870. And this act made provision for the establishment of school board in every district. And this school board was supposed to take care of the children who are from 5 to 12 years old and see to it that they are educated properly. And this education was cheap, but it was not free. That is, the whole education, how much ever expenses were taken, it was divided into three, and one third was borne by the government's grant of money, and the second one third was the school board will go and collect as a local tax, and they will use it for the education, and only the last one third of the amount was collected as school fees. Thus, England for the first time brought in a national system of education. And the Education Act of 1870 was followed by many other acts which brought so many changes up to the university education level. Until then, it was a custom that if anyone wants to get into the academic post in either Oxford or Cambridge, they have to first pass a religious test. And therefore, only one sector of people in the religion, they were able to get into Oxford and Cambridge in the academic post. But even this was removed by the Test Act of 1871. And because of this, in the last 3 decades of the 19th century, most of the staff of the two universities, that is Oxford and Cambridge, had laymen working for them. And more than that, the study of physical sciences was introduced, and we have eminent men of science like Clerk Maxwell, J.J. Thomson at Cambridge. And in the industrial centers, they started new universities because they wanted to encourage the study of professional subjects. And therefore, University of London was established in 1836, and other universities of Manchester, Liverpool, Newcastle and Cardiff all started functioning. And all these institutions were the outcome of the progress of scientific and technical education, which was the actual characteristics of 19th century. And there was a separate college for scientific instructions, which later on became the Royal College of Science in 1890. And at the same time, lots of attention was given even to women's education. In 1848, Queen's College for Women was established, and soon we have Bradford College, Cheltenham College and several good private schools. And even examinations were opened for girls as well as boys in Oxford and Cambridge, and the newly formed universities admitted both boys and girls, that is men and women. And London University gave its degree to women for the first time in 1879. And one more reform which boosted the development of education in the Victorian period was Gladstone. He abolished the patronage in public houses. That is, till then they will appoint people whom they know, who have influence in the government public offices. But then he introduced a competitive examination, and he said that will be the normal entrance to civil service, and therefore trained intellect, the young man's best passport was that he can enter into these civil services, because till then social patronage or fashionable friends only was the entrance ticket, but now the intelligence of the young man was the entrance ticket to these civil services. And in the year 1870, there was a turning point in the education history of England. That is, after the elementary education was made a remarkable progress, the average school attendance rose from quarter 1 and a quarter to 4.5 millions between 1870 and 1890. Many people started getting education, and the Royal Commission also appointed a study the system of education in the country. And this commission reported in 1895 that the system working in England was defective in many ways. And this they did by comparing it with a highly centralized and efficient German system. And comparing to German system, they said that the English system of education had many defects. And in order to rectify this, the Board of Education was established in 1899. And 3 years later, something more effective was done by the Prime Minister Arthur James Balfour, who was ruling at that time. He brought in the Education Act of 1902, which laid the foundation for education in Britain during the 20th century. And the school boards were abolished, and the power to provide for education both in the primary and secondary level was given to the elected county councils and certain large borough councils. Now, because of this, the private agencies were compelled to bring their schools to a certain standard of efficiency. Only then they will be eligible to get the financial assistance from the government. And this was a great step taken towards establishment of a uniform national system of education, and in this way education really developed a lot during the Victorian period. If you have anything more to add on to what I've said, please write it in the comment box, like the video, share it with your friends, and if you have not subscribed my channel, please subscribe and support. Thank you.